It's National Signing Day 2016, and Orange Fizz has you covered.
We got to have men in that room that are unselfish. They're willing to think more about the team than themselves.
Hear from Dino Baber's first recruiting class all day long, right here on orangefizz.net.
The tradition here is unbelievable, and the fan support, we need to give them what they deserve.
Welcome inside the 2016 Orange Fizz National Signing Day Sports Center Special. We got Connor Morrissette, Logan Grossman, Seth Goldberg, and Nate Dickinson here to break down the hectic day that was Dino Baber's first National Signing Day with Syracuse. Starting off with some general thoughts, then we'll move in recruit by recruit thoughts. My first thought, and Logan, we'll get to you in a minute. You were at Dino Baber's press conference, but I was able to catch some of it, and it seems like he's really recruiting guys to fit his system. Some people are all about the best available players. For Baber's, I didn't really get that with him. He wants to get the guys that are going to fit in his style. He made that very clear, and he had limited time to do it, so the class rankings won't be the highest, but he has that philosophy down, and I think that's the biggest difference between Schaefer and Baber's. Baber's the established head coach. He's done this before. Schaefer, I think, was, a little bit different in the recruiting game. Baber's knows what he wants, and he's getting it done.
Well, Baber's used the word philosophy today, and I think that pretty much sums it up, and I think that's a great word to describe really what he's about. He has the guys, he has this kind of culture around the football teams that he coaches, and I think that he goes after the guys that fit that. And a lot of the guys that Schaefer initially had didn't necessarily fit that culture, that philosophy, and that's why they're not part of this 2016 class. He talked about a few of the guys that still will be, that fit his vision for the program. As he talked highly of Rex Culpepper especially. So there are guys that Schaefer brought in, and he applauded Schaefer and his coaching staff for going out and finding some of these guys. But he really brought in a good number of people that he thinks, though they may not be the flashy guys, they're going to be the guys that will get it done. And again, he said you'll have to wait and see. We'll know in 2.5, 3 years really what this was about.
Seth, opening thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it was very interesting because there's kind of this perception that there's nobody really on this team that fits with what Syracuse wants to do now under Dino Babers, and I think that's a bit of a misconception. I think there are certainly parts on this offense that will fit, and if you don't think they'll fit, you make them fit, whether it's a talent like Irv Phillips or Steve Ishmael, somebody like that. What I was impressed with, what I heard Dino Baber say, was we didn't have very much time, so we focused on the offensive and defensive line. We focused on the trenches because that's the most important part. And those kids are the most important to get in right now because they need to grow, not just in the system, but they need to physically grow. They need to get bigger. And by getting them in the first class as opposed to the second, you're a year ahead. So if your offensive line is a step ahead from your skills guys, it allows your skills position players to develop a little faster because all of a sudden the quarterback's not necessarily under duress. The running back has a hole to run through. The quarterback can get the receiver the balls. So I think that it's the right way to start building your team. It's from the inside out. And I was very impressed with there's so much hype around the skill players and flying fast all around the field, and Orange is the new fast, and just running up and down the field. But we didn't forget today that this team starts in the trenches, and Dino Babers and his staff did not forget that.
Nate, observations from you.
I agree 100% with what Seth is saying, and you look at Babers from what he's been doing on Twitter and what he's been saying in interviews, he's just as excited about these offensive and defensive linemen as he is these guys that are supposedly going to be running this high-powered offense. He's just as excited about those guys coming in. But I think it's interesting that Babers went with the linemen because I was at Schaefer's 2015 National Signing Day Conference, and he said the exact same thing. They focused a lot on the offensive and defensive line. They had more commits on the lines than with any other position group. So it's just kind of a thing where what happens now to this abundance of linemen that Syracuse has on the roster, and that'll be interesting going forward. As for Syracuse's class this year not being up to what it has been in the years past, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Stephen Bailey of Syracuse.com tweeted out earlier today that this class is on pace to be its most talented since 2000. That's according to 24/7's composite rankings. I don't know all their specifics.
Yeah, something along those same lines. Mike McAllister of Scout said that this is the best class as a ranking of average stars per player. It's the best class that Syracuse has had since Scout started keeping those records back in 2001. They're right around 3 stars per player this year, the highest they've ever been. So, feeds your point.
Yeah, and I'm excited about this class. I'm excited to see what these guys can do. Just like I was excited to see what the 2015 guys could do. And then we had guys like the Jordan Fredericks and the Eric Dungies of that class come out and show us what they're capable of. So now we got a really young and what appears to be talented core. And I'm excited to see what Dino Babers is going to do with it.
I still think Syracuse near the bottom in the ACC in terms of rankings, but I mean, I guess that's always going to happen. So to your guys' point, I don't think I gave them enough credit at the beginning, the coaching staff. For the limited time, they have recruited well. Rankings are rankings, but, you know, what always happens is to win a national title, you always have to have the best classes, and this is Syracuse football, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Start going now recruit by recruit, and in no particular order, Andrew Armstrong, a linebacker who committed to Bowling Green, and he followed the Syracuse coaches to Syracuse, and he said that he never envisioned himself playing for the Orange.
If you would have asked me, 3 months ago or 4 months ago if I would have been, signing with Syracuse, I would have said you're crazy. But, it's a dream come true to play Division I football.
Armstrong there called it crazy that a couple months ago he'd be signing with Syracuse, and here he is. One thing that I'll pose the question to you guys, Bowling Green guys who started there and now they're with Syracuse, do you like seeing those guys, or are you kind of weary that maybe it's a Bowling Green kind of a player fitting Syracuse? Is that a stretch, or did they just play the hand they were dealt?
I think that I think that part of it is they played the hand they were dealt. They were like, hey, we've got a great relationship with that coaching staff. That coaching staff moved on. But Dino Babers today said, and I believe it was to Matt Park before the news conference this afternoon, he said, we recruited these kids at the beginning at Bowling Green, and then some of them, their talent level, we were lucky to hang on to them. And we only got them because we were early. And they turned into kids that were then getting offers from Big Ten schools and ACC schools, and then they moved to a Power 5 school, and they were able to then compete again. I don't know how much of that is necessarily true. I don't know commit by commit which kid was and which kid wasn't. But if it's the case of, hey, we got on them early, and that's why they said yes to Bowling Green, and since we moved to the bigger school, they were like, yeah, we have the ability to play at that level, then it's good for them.
So it sounds, Seth, you're encouraged. Anyone else feel the same way, differently?
I think when a kid is committing to play football in college, they're committing just as much to the coach and the coaching staff and the people that recruited them as they are to the program. So you have to understand from his perspective why he would want to move on to Syracuse. And you have to understand, he's like, I'm Dino Babers. He was nice to me. I liked what he had to say. I think I would fit well in his system. And, I don't think that would be any different, Bowling Green, Syracuse. So if you're from Syracuse, then you have to take a step back now. Babers has to look, okay, this guy would have been great at Bowling Green. We get along. Clearly, I saw something I liked. Otherwise, I wouldn't have offered him a scholarship in my last job. So what does he bring now that would make him valuable at Syracuse? And I think it comes down to the coach's judgment, and we have no reason to doubt Babers yet. It's so early in the process. He's been at Syracuse for a month. So I think it's very hard to tell if this is a good thing, a bad thing that he's following, but I don't think it's a surprising thing at all, and I think it's probably to be expected.
Nate, do you have any thoughts there?
I'll tell you what. At first, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all seeing Bowling Green guys come to Syracuse because, Syracuse isn't a MAC school. It's given Syracuse isn't a big ACC school at that, but Syracuse isn't a MAC school, and they see Service, I think, was the first guy that came over from Bowling Green after Babers got hired, and I see him, and I think 2-star guy. This seems like a MAC player that now all of a sudden has a Power 5 offer just because the coaching staff changed. But over time, I've become much warmer to the idea as I've seen these guys start coming in, because you look at the other offer sheets that these guys have, and it's not just that they've been MAC guys coming to ACC schools. This is Babers being a good recruiter more than it is him just bringing his recruiting board over to Syracuse.
Yeah, I think you got to trust the coaches. Sorry,
I was going to say the same thing. It might be a situation where he was out recruiting Bowling Green, which
they were good too. Let's not forget they were.
Oh, absolutely. And if you want to translate that, if he can out recruit here, then you're looking at a level of players that's a pretty decent level of players that you're going to bring in. So I think that's a good sign for the program.
And other guys who are interested in Bowling Green who couldn't make the jump to Syracuse, look at a Drew Beasley. He's a preferred walk-on at Michigan State today. It's not like they took everyone. Moving on to Sean Riley, a California running back. I'm excited about this guy, a little undersized, but he says it's going to be a smooth transition for him at Syracuse.
Well, I believe I'll fit perfectly in the offense with Coach Dino Baber. He wants to utilize me in the slot and at running back, so I think I will fit in pretty good in his offense.
I talked with his coach as well, Manny Douglas, from Narbonne out there in California. And real interesting story here. This is why having a head coach who has experience, and a lot of experience, is so important. Coach Douglas had a relationship with Babers prior to him being interested in these California guys, and next thing you know, he reaches out and says, hey, Coach, I have some kids you might want to take a look at. There were three of them: Devon Cooper, who commits to Arizona today, Cedric Bird, who wasn't quite good enough to get the Syracuse offer, and Sean Riley. So Baber's connections paying off with Riley. A little bit undersized, like I mentioned, but he's an exciting player running back.
Yeah, I've heard of Riley as a guy who, could be dangerous also out of the slot.
True. Yeah, he's like that H-back role.
Right. So you look at it that way, and maybe it's a guy who becomes extremely dangerous in the passing game. Maybe if you have a couple of more running backs. The Orange has talent in the backfield already, is getting more. So you don't know how it stacks up, So if he can bring the versatility to go play in the slot when there has been rumors, reports that the coaching staff is a little iffy on some of those players, on some of the receiving talent on the team, maybe Riley is a guy who that's his first break. His first break is in the slot and doing kick returns. And that's how he gets on the field this year. And then you see where it progresses to.
I think it would be very interesting to see where a guy like him could fit in. Because it's not just that they have some running backs. They have a pretty young backfield. And they had two young guys take really the brunt of the carries this season in Strickland and Frederick. So I think that it'll be interesting. And I think that could be a great point. You might see him not really play running back, at least to start. And he's got competition in the backfield, and he's going to have to battle his way if he wants to actually play running back.
Moving on now, Joel Shaw, Pennsylvania running back. So Riley is a bit of the smaller guy. Shaw is the little bigger, a little meaner, but here's his high school coach, and he says he has another side as well.
He's a happy-go-lucky kid. He enjoys life. He's quiet. He's fun to be around.
Shaw and another running back on that Woodlands Hill team in Pennsylvania. That kid was a 5-star recruit who went to Penn State, so that was a loaded backfield. Shaw, not the top player, but he's a guy who the coach spoke very, very highly of as well. So an angry runner, but a very nice kid. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on this guy, but judging by what his coach said, he's someone who Syracuse fans will be able to root for. So that's exciting. Always good to see a nice kid in the uniform.
And one note that I'll throw out there as far as the actual physical recruitment of the kid, he played in Pittsburgh, had an offer from Pittsburgh, and Syracuse beat them out. So you look at it that way, and Syracuse, yes, had a little bit of a slow start because of the coaching change and because Dino Babers and his staff got out to a late start. But they were still able to go and beat out the kid's hometown school, where he's literally playing in the same city. So I think that's a huge win that, yeah, he's a 3-star recruit. Yeah, he's a running back that you don't really know how you're going to use him or what you're going to get out of him. But the fact that they can go and get him has to be a feather in the cap of Dino Babers.
Absolutely, Seth. I agree with you 100%. We're seeing some recruiting wins. It's not like Schaefer didn't have any recruiting wins himself, but Babers, this is definitely exciting. Jaquan Nelson is a guy who, defensive side of the ball now, switching over. He was one of the kind of iffy guys at the beginning of the day. Would he go to Georgia? Would he go to Kentucky? He chooses Syracuse, and we spoke with his coach, and Nelson has had a very tough upbringing, and we'll let the coach tell you about it.
Well, lost his mother at a very, early age. There are days where he's still thinking, he may shed some tears here and there or whatever when he's thinking about it. But, I would like to think that she is part of his motivation.
So Jaquan Nelson, mother passes away at a very young age, and now he has a point to prove. This is a guy who, A, you're rooting for, and B, you're excited about. Georgia was interested, Kentucky was interested, SEC schools, Syracuse nabbed him. Reminds you of Dante Strickland last year when Georgia was knocking on his door late. Jaquan Nelson is a player to watch, and his coach could not speak highly enough of him. It was incredible listening to him in that interview.
Yeah, and again, a recruiting win, because you have an SEC team that now just hired the defensive coordinator of the reigning national champs in Kirby Smart, has a great pedigree to begin with, and they come and charge hard, and he still says, you know what, I'm still going to go to Syracuse. Whether it was Georgia ended up running out of space for him, or he took too long, or whatever the reason may be, he still chose to come to Syracuse over Georgia, and again, another recruiting win for the staff.
He's also a Fort Lauderdale, Florida kid. He had an offer from Miami. And I think the Georgia's huge because you're looking at, and Georgia seemed to be today the biggest threat to Syracuse.
If I could quickly interrupt, Logan, Mark Richt, the coaching change at Miami made him kind of, he wasn't being looked at by Richt. He was actually recruited under the previous regime and committed there, then decommitted. But I think Miami was out of the picture a little bit.
I think then it's important to note that he took an official visit to Georgia just last week.
True.
And a week before that, he committed to Syracuse. And then, so, these kids, and they're kids, so they're going to keep changing their mind. 1,000 things can change.
Look at Rashad Smith today.
Exactly. 1,000 things can change with these kids. And so I think, to Seth's point, nabbing him away from Georgia for whatever reason that he didn't, whether it was Georgia's choice or his choice, Georgia was there and Syracuse was there, and ultimately he's coming to Syracuse.
Nate, do you think this is Syracuse's biggest recruiting win today?
Oh, by far. This is probably the only guy that going into today we didn't know for sure, like you said. And to be able to grab him away from Georgia and away from the other schools he had offers from, it's huge. It's huge for the Orange just to know that Syracuse can win a head-to-head battle and not have to get into a great player early.
Moving back to the offensive side of the ball, Devin Butler, a Maryland wide receiver, he told me Dino Babers has a special nickname for all of his wide receivers, and we'll play that for you now.
Well, he called all his wide receivers his baby, so when he called me his baby, I felt really special. It sounded weird at first, but I was like, I can get the hang of it. But when he called me that, I felt like he was going to pay more attention to me. He was going to look out for me because I'm one of his receivers, I'm one of his babies, and he's going to keep me on the right path. And I've heard that he put over 30 receivers in the wide receiver. I mean, not in the wide receiver, in the NFL. And I'm trying to be one of those 30. I'm trying to help his credibility as well as make myself better.
So Dino Babers, known for getting his receivers into the NFL, as you heard, calls them babies. I think that's an interesting trend. And I think in the class of 2017, I know Butler's a 2016 guy, but in the class of 2017, you look out for those wide receivers. Syracuse built up the offensive line, the defensive line in this class. I think receivers are coming because when you have Babers' pedigree, you're getting guys into the NFL who wouldn't want to play for this guy. I know I would if I was a wide receiver on the bubble of looking at a couple schools. And I think Butler is one of those first guys to really show what Syracuse can get because he's a Maryland decommit. It's not like he's a nobody.
Yeah, and you look at it, and you look at Dino Baber's system and just how favorable it is to receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, anybody really on the offensive side of the ball. It is so favorable to what they do, what they want to do, and putting up, and I should say it's favorable to putting up big numbers. You look at it at Baylor, at Eastern Illinois, it got Jimmy Garoppolo taken in the second round. It got a guy in Matt Johnson at Bowling Green who was an unranked recruit who's not going to sniff the NFL. It got him to be throwing for over 4,000 yards a year. So this is a system that if you're an offensive player, you've got to be salivating at the thought of it.
Logan and Nate, if I could pose a question to you. Butler played quarterback in high school. What are your guys' thoughts on guys having to switch positions? Do you like that, not like that?
Exactly what I was going to bring up. He played quarterback at high school. I usually don't love it. I usually don't love seeing guys switch positions. I mean, from high school to college is one thing because they're still undeveloped and things like that, but switching from quarterback to wide receiver is a completely different story. Now he has the mindset of a quarterback. He knows what the quarterback's going to be thinking, whether it be Dungy or Culpepper, but that's an entirely different conversation. He's going to know what a quarterback's mind looks like, and he's going to be able to read off it, and I think he's going to be able to have good chemistry with whoever's throwing him passes.
I think if you're going to switch positions, the end of high school to college is the time to do it. I think, you come to college as a quarterback, and then they're like, well, we have 6 other quarterbacks on the roster, so now you're playing receiver. Oh, you've now been on the team for a year as a quarterback and have to switch. I think it's tougher. I think it's better to come in switching positions.
Yeah, like you said, he's coming in knowing that. And I don't know that if he was approached and said, hey, look, you have to switch, or maybe, and I think this would be even the better message if you're him, if he goes to the coaches and says, look, I would love to come to Syracuse, but I know I'm not good enough. I need to switch positions. Then you're looking at a kid who's not only talented, but, has that, team first kind of mentality and thought process.
One other thing with Butler, also going to run track at Syracuse. I believe he's the only multi-sport athlete in this class. Staying with the offense, Michael Clark, a Pennsylvania offensive lineman. He says he's targeting a championship.
I want to win a national championship. I want to bring honor back to 44 and make the Syracuse fans proud.
Might be a little bit too lofty, but this guy, he'll know a thing or two about lofty. 6'7", one of 2 6'7" offensive linemen that Babers has brought in. Another Maryland decommit, so Syracuse competing with some pretty decently named guys. And then also, he says Syracuse is his dream school. So he seems like someone loves Syracuse. He's excited, and he's got lofty goals. I'm a fan of that.
And we talked about it. Baber said it all starts in the trenches. Here's a big offensive lineman standing at 6'7", 277. You can't teach size. So the fact, and you need big offensive linemen. Height is a very underrated attribute for offensive linemen.
Yeah.
You look at the best offensive linemen, they're all 6'6", 6'7". It's not just how wide you are, it's how tall you are too. And this is a guy that decommitted from Maryland on January 13th. Then a week, less than 10 days later, came to Syracuse for a visit, got an offer that weekend, and committed that day. So he clearly
knows what he wants.
He clearly fell in love with Syracuse, whether it was the school, Babers, or some sort of combination. He knew exactly when he came here that this is what he wants.
I think you hit on something earlier there, Logan, and it's the size. This is a guy, and they've picked up a couple of offensive linemen. Connor mentioned 2 that are 6'7". I think they picked up another that was 6'6". They're picking up big offensive linemen. Syracuse is not going after, and I don't know that they were necessarily going after in the past, but they're not going after the undersized offensive lineman. They're not going after the guy who's small enough but has great technique and will work hard. They want to go after a guy who's huge, going to push you around, and going to really fight and make that battle in the trenches won by the Orange.
But he's not. You guys are talking all about the height. Let's talk about the weight too. 277.
Yeah.
This isn't a guy who's going to have to be putting on much weight going into next season. He's already there. So it just knowing that you have such a huge big guy, I'm liking it. I'm liking Babers favoring the big guys that he can mold himself over the smaller guys who maybe already have more of the fundamentals and that kind of stuff.
Solid point, Nate. Sticking with the offensive line, Sam Heckel. If you're a Syracuse football fan, you're going to want to hear this soundbite.
I really think the program is going in the right direction despite the change. And Dino's group of coaches, they're great guys. They're great coaches. They win whenever they go, wherever they go. And
wherever Dino Babers goes, he wins. So we've had a lot of offensive line talk. Heckel, another big guy. You don't really know with the O-lineman until they get on there, and if the guy runs by him, sacks the quarterback, you hate him. If you don't hear his name at all and he's on the field, you love him. Let's talk about what Heckel said. Wherever Dino Babers goes, he wins. Power 5, does he have enough left? I hope.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, he won at Eastern Illinois. He won at Bowling Green. He won at Baylor when he was the offensive coordinator, and he was a part of that turnaround. So I find that a very difficult claim to dispute. Not saying that he's going to go crazy and all of a sudden be winning ACC titles in 2 years. Look, I'm not saying that. Because I still think for the time being, and this is getting into a bigger issue, I still think for the time being that the absolute best that Syracuse could ever do is 10-2. Because you still have Clemson and Florida State on your schedule every single year. So I think that even if you get to the point where you're a great team, you're still not at the level of a Clemson and Florida State. So I think Dino Babers can win, but I don't know that he can win an ACC title. right now.
Logan and Nate, isn't it just nice to have a guy who's done it before? Schaefer hadn't done it before, and now you got proven track record in Dino Babers. Not proven at the big level, but it's a guy who's won games. I'm excited by that. How do you guys feel?
He's 37-16 as a head coach, and that you can't argue 37-16. That is a great record for a head coach. His last season at Bowling Green, this past season, he won 10 games, got them to a bowl game. So you can't argue that he's won in the past. Can he translate that into a 10-win season at Syracuse? Certainly not right away. Syracuse is not going to win 10 games this year. I don't think there's any way you can argue that they can. But I think he just brings a winning culture, and I think it's hard to downplay how important that is.
I don't know if there's anyone who could have gotten Syracuse football fans more excited in his first 2 months of coaching in the offseason, of all things.
Yeah.
These fans are excited to watch this team play, and we're still, how many months until September, the first game? What,
hey, 2 months. 2 months until the spring game.
2 months until the spring game, that's true. We're still 8 months away from the first game, and these fans are already itching to watch Syracuse football again, and we're in the middle of basketball season.
Staying in the offensive line, staying on the offensive line. Aaron Service, another Bowling Green guy. Now he's on Syracuse. He had one person and one person only to thank for his commitment.
Just to have my mom sit next to me, it meant so much. I mean, she sacrificed so much and she's done so much for me during this recruiting process, with getting me to camps and on visits and everything, just to help me get that exposure. It just means a lot that I was able to, not put all that effort to waste for her.
His mother, very, very nice when the guys thank Mom. Aaron Service played that up big. Now, it's one thing to be on the defensive side for Bowling Green, but now this guy, it's an offensive lineman, someone you're trusting to protect Eric Dungy. We'll get back into the Bowling Green discussion again. You trust the coaches. I mean, we all say that's what you got to do. But talking with this guy, this has been a long, long relationship. It's not like he was a Bowling Green guy right before the coaches switched to Syracuse. This thing's been going on for a very, very long time. So Andrew Armstrong, a little bit newer to the game. Aaron Service is the first guy for Bowling Green, the first guy for Syracuse, and I think that speaks very highly to him. And so I'm encouraged by him, even though he did start with Bowling Green.
Yeah, and look, when you're in a situation like Dino Babers and his staff were in, where you came in, you were just hired in December, and this is the case for most new coaches, I should say, not just Dino, but you're hired in December, and then there's the dead period, and then you're finally allowed to start talking to kids again. Who are the first people you're going to go to? You're going to go to the ones that you've already talked to and already gotten.
Suspects.
Right. You've got to go to the ones who you've already gotten to commit somewhere, even if it's not the school you're at now. You've got to go back to them and be like, "Hey, you still want to play for me? You've got the opportunity." So I can't necessarily blame them for that.
I agree. Nate, do you have a point?
Yeah, and another big guy, 6'6", 260, and I talked earlier about.
He's got a great mullet.
Yes, great mullet. If you want to see a great mullet, Google Aaron Service. But you talk about earlier about how Babers is favoring the guys that he can mold himself over the guys who may be more fundamentally sound. This is a guy that Babers is going to have to mold to an extent because you watch his huddle tape. He's a much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker from what I saw. He's going to have a lot to work on, but you see the athleticism there. And I think that's what intrigued Babers from the start.
Final offensive lineman in this class, Liam O'Sullivan, was flirting with Cincinnati a little bit, stuck with Syracuse, and he had some points to make on recruiting once he signed his letter.
Well, it's just like, sometimes some coaches, they lie to you and everything like that. To be completely honest, Coach Babers and his staff, they've always been completely honest with me, and that's what I always liked about them, too. That was always their thing. Like, they were always completely honest when they were going to offer me, how they were going to offer me, and everything like that. And then they stayed true to their word. That's why I like them a lot.
Syracuse was truthful. Some of the other coaching staffs he was dealing with were not. What do you guys think when it comes to just recruiting? It sounds like Dino Babers, honesty is his policy, and he spelled that out. That's encouraging. But then you see guys like Taylor Riggins' father, a guy who was committed to Syracuse under Scott Schaefer. He says the coaching staff wasn't truthful. Is it just a matter of different perspectives? Where do you guys stand with this issue?
I hate to throw this question out there, but isn't it just part of the game?
Yeah, I think
isn't it just part of the game that you're going to, I don't want to say lie, but just like bend the truth and be like, yeah, we're doing this and this and this, and we promise you'll play year one. Like, nobody knows that you're going to play year one.
Yeah,
but you say that to everybody, right?
Coaches are politicians.
Yeah.
When it comes to the recruiting process, coaches are politicians. They got to do what they have to do, make the promises to the guys that they have to make. And I'm not saying – I don't think anybody here is saying Dino Babers is throwing out empty promises left and right. I don't think that's what anyone means by this. But I think that in some way or another, there are promises you have to make to players that you understand might not pan out in the end. I don't think Dino Babers makes a promise that he thinks is never going to happen when he says it.
Right, and I mean, I don't think Scott Schaefer necessarily did either. Like,
right.
He didn't come off as that guy. Not to say that there
the
are...
The problem with Schaefer, sorry to cut you off, Seth, remember, he just would stop talking to guys.
Yeah.
Like, and not to say,
absolutely.
Not to say that that's not being truthful, but like, we offered him, he committed. Let's just not talk
right.
to him
No,
and take the hint.
And that's a different issue.
So
but
it's just recruiting's a fickle game. That's where I stand.
Yeah, that's my thoughts too.
And Dino Babers, he had these buzzwords at his press conference today. Honesty was one of them. And I have to believe that he really believes he's going to be honest with kids. But at the same time, like you guys keep saying, there's only so much honesty in the game of recruiting. And there comes a point where, like this kid, you feel like you're about to lose him, then you just kind of say something, and you might not fully mean it, and you just kind of have to do it.
Switching it over to the defensive side, Evan Foster, a defensive back out of Michigan. He was with Bowling Green and then was very high on Syracuse. Purdue was up there as well. But one school in particular came in late for him, and he stuck with SU.
First off, I want to say Iowa came on strong at the last minute. I just felt like they really weren't there for me the entire time, and I just felt like they just wanted to squeeze me into their class and try to fill spots, and I just wasn't having it.
Foster had serious looks from Iowa. Iowa was a team that was coming for him hard, and he said the thing that he liked about Syracuse the most was they had stayed with him, and he was one of those Bowling Green guys. So I think, Seth, your point earlier about Bowling Green getting the guys who they probably shouldn't be getting, now Foster's getting looks from Iowa, looks from Purdue, Syracuse, so that fits to your point beautifully. And what happened? Syracuse gets him because this staff was with him from the beginning, so it's very important to start those ties early, which is why the coaches right now are reaching out to some 2017 guys. That's encouraging. Early. I think these coaches are going to do a good job with that. Hopefully they can hang on.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you see coaches reach out to like freshmen in high school, and we joke about it, and we laugh at how ridiculous it is that, teams give out, whether ceremoniously or not, they give scholarship offers to kids who are in like 7th grade, and we laugh about it, but like there's a legitimate reason behind it.
Kids remember that.
Yeah, if you meet a guy when you're 15 or 14 and then it comes time to go to college, like I'm going to go with the guy that I know for 5 years, So I think there is something to it, and you've got to build the relationships. Again, part of the game of recruiting.
Baber said at his press conference today is not only National Signing Day, it's the first day, starting right now, 2017, we're getting these guys. We're starting with full-on 2017 recruiting today. 2016 is behind us. It's all about 2017 now. And so, you got to get in early, and kids remember this. Clearly, this kid was just really, it really seems essentially was committed to Dino Babers more than he was obviously committed to Bowling Green, because he followed Dino to Syracuse and was not swayed by when a huge school like Iowa came in, who was
especially who had a great year this year.
Yeah, Iowa was like a play away from getting to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So it's impressive that Syracuse was able to sway him away from that team.
Devon Clark, a Florida defensive back, sticking with the defensive backfield right now. He, if you guys remember, committed to Syracuse in the summer, and Schaefer said, no, we don't want you right now, and pushed him away. Today he signs his letter of intent, and he thinks he might be able to get on the field early.
Yeah, Coach Monroe had told me to be ready to play early when I get up there, so I have to work hard.
Early playing time, something that can happen, especially when it's the first year's coach's class. And let's not forget, the secondary was putrid last year, so I think they'll be looking to start over. Clark is a guy who might be able to get in early for Syracuse. It's going to be a young and inexperienced unit back there again. Maybe, we just talked about him, but maybe Foster as well. I think early playing time will definitely be a factor for some of these guys.
And Clark, a guy, he had an offer from Charlotte. I don't want to get away with Clark for a second, but Robert Washington committed to Charlotte earlier
Any way to
today.
fit that in.
Yeah, any way to fit that in. I'm just to touch. Remember when Robert Washington was telling us he was going to be recruiting guys to Syracuse?
Yeah.
Remember when that happened a few months ago? I just thought it was interesting seeing that Clark had an offer from Charlotte. Reminded me of Washington and just. I don't.
What
let's
a
get
disaster
back.
that's been.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Clark, he's a Florida kid, and it's good. Any Florida kid you can get, I think.
Yeah,
is good.
Florida is such a great talent base and such a great, area that just churns out talent for the whole country to use. So if you can get into Florida, and I think it was a bit of a concern because the last staff, say what you want about them in game and with recruiting and whatever, they recruited Florida very well. Very well. Really unproportionally. And so that was kind of a worry of, is there going to be a drop-off in Florida? And Syracuse this year, to their credit, stuck with the Florida area and has picked up quite a few Florida kids anyway.
Florida is such a big recruiting ground that one of the guys we thought might be a finalist or a candidate for the Syracuse coaching job, Scott Frost, he went to a school in Florida, UCF, that went 0-12 this year instead of coming to Syracuse. And you have to think one of the big reasons is because it's just easier to recruit one of, if not the biggest recruiting ground in the country when you go to a school down there.
Kendall Coleman, a Western Michigan commit, and he was all about Western Michigan, it looked like. And then next thing you know, Mike Hart, Vince Reynolds, they go from Western Michigan to Syracuse. They were this kid's primary recruiters, and as a result, Babers hires two coaches, and he gets some commits as a result of it. Coleman was one of them, and there's another Western Michigan connection in the mix. I forget the exact which player it was, but Kendall Coleman, he is SU, and he was ecstatic.
I mean, I was talking to some of my friends earlier, and I can't stop smiling. It's a euphoric feeling, Like, it's just hard to believe that this moment is real and that we finally made it here.
One of the first people we talked to this morning on our big national thread, the National Signing Day thread, that's a big word he's using, euphoric. He is very exciting. You're very excited, smiling ear to ear. But let's talk about Mike Hart, guys, a Michigan legend. Do you think on offense, Babers is, it's exciting to play for him, but now you got a guy in Hart, who was a dominant player at Michigan. I think he's going to help recruiting as well. Here he helps on the defensive side. Offense is coming next.
Well, and oddly enough, not just a Michigan guy. I mean, he's from here. He's a guy who's from Central New York. So this was kind of the perfect fit. It was the at the time, hey, why aren't we getting him? Kind of a feeling of hey, why isn't he staying home instead going to Michigan? And I think you mentioned it, and I was going to bring it up. The connection that he had with a couple of kids from Western Michigan, so much so that he moved and they wanted to come with him. This isn't a guy who is a head coach. He's not even an offensive coordinator or an assistant coach or an associate head coach. He's a positions coach. He's a running backs coach that was dragging in defensive players. I mean, if he can have that impact on 3 more kids when he's here, you're looking at, a coach that can really build those relationships.
Seth, you talked to Carl Jones, a defensive back out of Ohio. I'll turn it over to you for him.
Yeah, I think this quote that we're going to hear is just great. Exactly what you want to hear out of kids. He knows his place when he comes to SU.
Just the competition. I'm a guy who likes to compete and work hard, and I think that's one of the biggest things I'm going to have to do when I get up there, prove myself all over again. I mean, it's not high school where you're the top dog. You're back at the bottom of the totem pole, so I wouldn't have it any other way.
I mean, you listen to it, and he says, I'm at the top now. I'm going to get to Syracuse and be right at the bottom of the totem pole. And he knows he has to work his way up. He's looking forward to the competition aspect of getting here. I was very impressed with that kind of, sense of realisticness and reality.
I love
surrounding him.
I love Carl Jones. He was a guy who didn't start at cornerback until Game 6 of his senior season. So he has a ton of raw talent. He hasn't really been refined. He's new to the position, and he only had 2 other offers besides Syracuse, 2, I think, Army and the Air Force Academy. So this was a guy who not on too many people's radar, but he was on Baber's radar, as it turns out. and someone who is going to have a ton of potential just because he is so new to this position. I'm excited to see what he can offer because how many times do you hear, oh, yeah, he was really a late bloomer, and then those guys turn out to be terrific players.
Yeah, and Connor, you mentioned that he didn't have very much attention paid to him, and I asked him about that too. He only got those two other offers, scholarship offers. Syracuse was his only one of a Power 5 school, and he comes from Ohio, and he was saying, look, I've got teammates who are going to Ohio State, who are going to Michigan, who are going to Notre Dame, and I got one Power 5 offer. You can bet that's going to be a motivating factor for me. So I think it's just another sense of he knows where he is, he knows where he stands in the grand scheme of things, and he'll use that to his advantage.
Nate, switching it over to you now. You talked to the Plant head coach. Plant, of course, giving an offensive player to Syracuse, Rex Culpepper, the quarterback. He's already enrolled, so we didn't talk with him today. Scoop Bradshaw on the defensive side, the cornerback. Take it away.
Well, first off, if you want to hear a guy who's really passionate about his players, both on and off the field as football players and people, listen to my interview with Coach Weiner, because that guy cares about his players so much. You'll hear, I asked him, just give me the elevator pitch on these guys. He talked for 10 minutes. It was crazy. He has developed such a relationship with these guys, and both of them are just such class acts from what I've heard from Weiner. And from the clips we're going to hear, Rex Culpepper, Renaissance man, and then Scoop Bradshaw, one of the nicest guys that Coach Weiner says he's ever been associated with, but on the field, not so much.
And then that, of course, goes along with a young man who's never made anything but an A in his entire life as a student, a kid who's an Eagle Scout, a kid who 2 years went to a camp for children with muscular dystrophy with me, and a kid who can play 7 musical instruments, a kid who, if your car breaks down, he can take the whole motor out and put it back in and fix it. I've never in my life have I met someone who's more of like the total package of what a kid can be than this kid is. You know, this kid, when you get off the field, he is, this may not be the right word or whatever, but he is the nicest, sweetest kid, that all of his teammates love. His smile lights up a room. But this is a kid with an edge. He plays mean on the field. There's no question about it.
So, yeah, Coach Weiner really likes these guys. Rex Culpepper, guy, straight A student with merit badges in car technology.
Yeah, he knows how to replace engines and play 7 instruments.
Plays the instruments.
We were joking around like he knows how to speak 4 languages, probably, right?
But no, in all seriousness, Coach Weiner said that this guy is more dedicated to doing everything the right way and doing it hard than anyone he's ever come across. And that's a high school that has had a lot of good players come through it.
Yeah, and these two guys are Schaefer guys, which I think that's something we should touch on. Sam Heckel, another Schaefer guy, but besides that, Mo Neal, another one. He already enrolled, but that's it. So Scoop Bradshaw, he's stayed strong with his commitment through 2 coaches, as did Culpepper. I think Weiner had a lot to do with that, and I'm excited for Culpepper, obviously, and Bradshaw, another guy in the secondary. If Syracuse's secondary can get better, please, I'll take any remedy at all. Bradshaw might be able to do that.
And on the Culpepper note, it's important to remember he tore his ACL and did not play his whole senior season. First off,
he's healthy now.
Yes, you hope that he's healthy and able to contribute as soon as possible. This is a guy who may win the backup job outright out of camp, and compete with Dungy if things go his way. And also, it's a guy who, if healthy and had he played his senior year, you're thinking a lot more highly of him. And you're probably looking at a guy who may have outplayed the offer here, may have outplayed Syracuse had he stayed healthy and played his senior season. So Syracuse has the potential to be getting a very, very good quarterback in Rex Culpepper.
Coach Weiner said the exact same thing. First thing he said when I asked him about Culpepper was Syracuse doesn't know what they're getting. Not that they haven't looked into or anything, but they haven't seen what Coach Weiner was able to see in the first couple weeks of practice and the improvement that he had made since his junior year. I'd be surprised if he's anywhere under the backup spot out of camp. I think that highly of this guy. And it's important to know, after he tears his ACL, the guy that comes in for him, his younger brother Judge, 2018 guy, also already has an offer from Syracuse.
Yes.
And Coach Wiener said, don't be surprised if Syracuse already has an in when it's time for Judge to get his recruiting started, as well with a bunch of other plant guys. He says that his guys like staying together.
And I think you're talking about his high school coach talking so highly of him. Dino Baber today at his press conference talked incredibly highly of Rex Culpepper, and he applauded Scott Schaefer for finding this kid. And he had nothing but good things to say about him, about his family, just about him as a person, even more so than a football player. And I think that's important to have on a team. You want a guy, especially a quarterback. Everyone always, it's the way football works now. You look to the quarterback, they're your leader. And whether or not he's going to start, if he starts 1 year, if he starts 4 years in college, you want a guy like that. You want a guy who could do a lot of different things, who people look up to, and who can be a leader for the football team. And he seems that he has that ability.
If I had to pick one player who I thought was going to be the star of this class right now, it would be Rex Culpepper.
All right, there you go. Bold statement from Nate. Nate, one last guy you spoke with, Tim Walton, Michigan man, linebacker. Take it away.
Yeah, Tim Walton. I asked him earlier today what he wanted his legacy to be after he was done with Syracuse, and we'll hear that right now.
But not only just a great, phenomenal player, but a great student athlete. I want to be remembered as a player who gave his all on and off the field.
So yeah, Tim Walton focused on not just being a great player, but also a great student athlete, which is something you always like to see from a coaching standpoint and from a fan standpoint, knowing that he's dedicated in all aspects of life. And I'll tell you this, another thing he told me, because he was committed to Illinois before. Babers recruited him at Bowling Green, but still committed to Illinois. I asked him, what was it about Syracuse that made you want to go to that coaching staff? And he said it was a communication school. Everyone knows the Newhouse School here is a big part of what Syracuse is all about. He said that was a big factor in him changing his decision. So Newhouse doing some recruiting for Syracuse.
Schaefer was excellent with linebackers. Remember the linebackers coach Clark Lee. Will Walton be able to keep that tradition up? That's something to look out for because, let's be honest, the linebacking core for Syracuse was the best part of a bad defense. Zaire Franklin was solid last year, made a couple of rookie mistakes down the stretch, but Cam Lynch has a home in the NFL now. The linebacking spot is so important for SU. The last coaching staff got that right. Didn't get too many things right, but got that right. It'll be interesting to see how this staff goes about that position.
Babers listed it right behind the guys in the trenches, offensive, defensive lines, as the position that they're targeting, and that he thinks is the most important to building it. And people are always asking him, but you're an offensive guy, and he says, I build entire football teams. I don't just build offenses. And linebackers are the captains of your defense. They're the guys who lead. They're like the quarterbacks of the defense, and having a good, especially middle interior linebacker, I think is very important for any successful defense.
Yeah, you hit it, and I was going to say, the middle linebacker is the quarterback. It is. It's the guy who's making the calls, running that team, organizing the unit on the field. That guy has to be the coach on the field. That's what Zaire Franklin looked like last year at times. And, now Zaire's going to be a junior. So you have to have somebody to follow him because you need these people to keep evolving and just kind of fill in. Also, and I think this is important, the defense that Dino Babers runs is a Tampa 2, which puts even more importance on the linebacking position. Like, you can run a standard 4-3, and, the linebackers are important, and they're just kind of, there. The Tampa 2 is a linebacker-centric defense. So you've really got to have some good linebackers who can go sideline to sideline, dropping coverage, and be able to blitz. They've got to be able to do it all in this system.
Definitely an encouraging sign if you're Syracuse. Babers able to turn a quick class around. Guys, I think this is just about going to do it for the Sports Center Special, the Fizz National Signing Day Sports Center Special. I'll just toss it around one more time. Any final takeaways from today? My one would be I'm excited about Jaquan Nelson. I love talking with his coach today. He's got a point to prove. I'm excited to watch his play. Guys?
Nate's got me convinced that Rex Culpepper is going to be the guy out of this class. And I think even more than you look at these guys. This guy's a 3-star. This guy's a 2-star. This guy's higher rated than the other guy. Who knows? And Babers keeps stressing it's going to be 2. It's going to be 3 years till we really know what this 2016 class was. it's important to take a step back. Now, yeah, it was an important day for Syracuse football. It was an important day to get these guys signed, and they got a bunch of guys signed. Maybe 2-3 weeks ago, it didn't look like they'd get close to this many guys, and they did. So I think overall, you have to say it was a pretty good day.
Yeah, I want to throw out a couple of points. First, they still recruited Florida, which was a huge key coming into today. You weren't quite sure where it was going to stand, and it was a shaky picture before that weekend where they picked up 9 guys in a weekend. 2, nobody from New York. And I think it's important to note, Dino Babers kind of brushed it off at the same time saying, look, we had
couldn't
a
trust
month.
those guys, he said.
Yeah, and he was like, look, I had a month to throw it together. I had to do what I had to do. And so I think that'll kind of get fixed. I don't think that's going to be a big deal moving forward. And my third, and I think this is the most important thing to remember on signing day, and this is just a big general statement here. 5-star guys can be busts, and no-star guys can become legends. It happens all the time. How many times in the past 3 years have we seen the highest-rated recruit in the Syracuse recruiting class not show up? So let's just keep that in mind as we, move forward the next few months, that there's always a surprise. There's always a surprise player. We just need to wait and see. It's a wait-and-see approach to the whole game.
You can only say so much. I agree.
Like I said before, real high on Rex Culpepper. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get at least a backup spot to Eric Dungy. Another thing, I'd really big on Dino Babers playing his own guys. So if it's close out of camp, don't be surprised if you see a younger guy getting a spot over an older guy because Babers thinks he fits the system better. See, I don't think seniority plays as big of a role in this upcoming season.
Not when there's a new coach.
Well, not at all. Not at all when there's a new coach. That's a good point. But if there's a guy who fits the system a little bit better but doesn't have the experience, don't be surprised if Babers puts him out there anyway.
For Logan Grossman, Seth Goldberg, Nate Dickinson, my name is Connor Morrissette. Thank you for listening to the 2016 Orange Fizz National Signing Day Sports Center Special.